here's a surprise. It turns out that petrol stations up and down the land have been ripping you off. They've been branded outrageous after overcharging motorists by £1.6 billion last year. This is the Competition and Markets Authority, who found that petrol stations' fuel margins, the difference between what a retailer pays for its fuel and what price it sells it at, remains significantly above pre-pandemic levels. Rod Dennis is Policy Officer at the RAC. Thank you very much indeed for coming on, Rod. I guess from the petrol station's point of view, or from the owners of them, they might say, well, why is the CMA judging how much profit I can make?
Well, look, Tom, this is all about charging a fair price. Here at the RAC, we've never said that retailers shouldn't make a profit from fuel. We understand it can be a profitable business. All we've ever argued is for fair prices, which means when wholesale prices fall, that's when the price of the raw material, if you like, comes down. It's only right that those reductions are passed on to drivers at the pumps. In many parts of the country, drivers have no choice other than to use their vehicles. And I think it is outrageous and frankly eye-watering sort of sums we're talking here. To be overcharged by £900 million in 2022, 1.6 billion last year. I mean, I think drivers have got every reason to be angry at this.
What is the current state of the oil price, or at least the Brent crude price?
So it's been it's actually been much more stable this year than we've seen in recent years. It's currently around about the $82 a barrel mark. We've got a price of a litre of petrol around about £1.45 across the UK. However, what I would say, Tom, is unless you live in Northern Ireland right now, which is charging a fair price and has done for a long time, you are generally being overcharged in many places across here in the UK.
Why is Northern Ireland? I'm delighted that listeners in Northern Ireland are getting a fairer deal, but how come?
Well, there seems to be some big peculiarities about things on this side of the RAC. I think we've got lots of impacts on the other side. Obviously, they're joined onto the Republic of Ireland. There are organisations, retailers, which are Republic of Ireland retailers, which are also operating in Northern Ireland and charging a fairer price. But it's also the case, and this is particularly relevant to what the CMA have found today, the big supermarkets do not have the footprint in Northern Ireland like they do over here.
Oh, that's
and the
so
fact
interesting.
is, if you speak to most people in the rest of the UK on this side of the RAC, many people, unless you live somewhere rural, will probably fill up at a supermarket and think they're getting a good deal. But I'm afraid the CMA has found consistently, as we found with our own data here, that is just not the case.
So this might be, and we talked about this a little bit at the time when it came to food inflation, that the supermarkets are really making their profits, not on the food, but at the pump.
Yeah, I think, I mean, if I take Asda as an example, they always used to pride themselves on low fuel prices. We'd often hear from the here at RAC, we would sort of campaign for prices to fall, and then a few weeks later we would see them go and announce, great news everyone, we've got to cut 3, 4, 5 pence a litre off at the pumps, and there'd be all sort of headlines around fuel price wars and all that sort of thing. That stuff just doesn't happen anymore, and I think that tells you all you need to know about supermarkets' approach to fuel these days. There is so little competition.
Yeah.
It's almost incredible, and yet drivers pay the price effectively.
So what is there is no incentive for supermarkets to put prices down by much, because as you say, there's very little competition. Everyone has to pay for it in the end, and the supermarkets know they can make a great deal of money if they charge everybody around 148 pence per litre for unleaded.
That's exactly right. I think there's another component which many people have forgotten about, and it's easy to forget. At the moment, us as drivers are all meant to be benefiting from a temporary 5p duty cut, which the previous Chancellor brought in. It's been reduced from nearly 58p to nearly 53. The fact is that 5p, Tom, is completely being swallowed up by the larger margins which retailers are taking. So there is no benefit to that at all. And the new Labour government, there's a very good chance the next year they will probably have to put that 5p back up again.
Yeah.
But if they do, it'll be fascinating to see whether retailers put their prices up as well.
And it costs a hell of a lot of money for the government to keep that 5p in, doesn't it?
Well, this is the thing, you see. We're all the point is we're all basically paying the price for that. I mean, we should be benefiting from it, but if you look at it time and time again, that isn't the case. It is. I mean, like I said, we don't generally sort of use superlatives unless it's absolutely required. But this is outrageous behaviour. I think people have got a right to be very angry about it. The previous government made a number of recommendations which the CMA took forward. We now need the sort of time of reviews and things. We need to get past that. We need the CMA to be given the powers that it wants. It's very clear from its report today. It's ready to basically do what we need it to do and start looking at the sector properly and start to call out examples where retailers are overcharging drivers. But I'm afraid for every day they don't and they're not able to do that, it's another day of being ripped off at the pumps.
Thanks for coming on, Rod. Rod Dennis, Policy Officer at the RAC. Listen, anyone that's filled up a car in the last, it feels like 3 and a bit years, maybe even more, It's painful. It is painful filling up a car at the moment because it's just so expensive, and it shows no sign of getting any better. Just when you thought 150 pence per litre was about as big as it was going to get for unleaded, it's still there. It's still at, well, around me anyway, about 147, 148. And it's not going to go down anytime soon. There's very little the government can do. There's very little, apparently, that the Competition and Markets Authority can do. But in Northern Ireland, it's going great guns.